We're here at the fantastic Lindholme Lakes in Doncaster. We're here to follow Alan Scotthorne for a midweek open match. Now Alan's drawn peg 15 on laurels. Not one of the flyers, but still a half decent peg. Alan's got an island about 16 metres away with a big overhanging tree. And with temperatures set to exceed 28, 29 degrees today, those fish might seek shelter under that tree. Now of course this is a live match, so we're going to keep well back from the water's edge. Look at how much gear Alan has set up today. Alan plans for this to be a tricky match and cover all eventualities. We'll catch up with Alan at the end of the match just to see how he's got on. Right Alan, congratulations. £107, 14 ounces and a match win.
Yeah, it's been a very difficult day. I mean, all right, I've caught £107, but for Lindholme standards, that's not a particularly big weight. But you've got to think that, I think because of the lockdown and the coronavirus, these lakes have just been fished and fished and fished because there's so many people going fishing. So, you know, the fish really have seen it all. So it's been a difficult day where I've had to do a lot of different things throughout days. It's been one of them where I've chopped and changed almost from start to finish.
I see you've had 9 top kits set up, 2 wagglers and 2 lead rods. Yeah. And you've used them, nearly all of them. Yeah,
I think that probably the only one I didn't pick up was the lighter bomb rod for 6mm pellets, but the one with 8mm pellets I've caught on, and obviously fishing a waggler over at top of that.
Yes. Yeah, so you started short, as you said you were going to. How did the short line go?
The short line were difficult. I mean, obviously when you're doing filming, there's been 2 of us moving about up bank, and maybe, you know, it's not good for a short line early in the session. But I started on corn. I mean, everybody here tends to start fishing with pellets, usually 6mm pellets. But again, I think these fish have seen so many pellets go in the lakes over the last, you know, couple of months that fish just tend to want something different. Now, you could have fished worms or casters or any other bait on that line, but the problem is there's so many silverfish in these lakes, i.e. roach, that, you know, corn is a good alternative to pellets, and that's what I started on, just for a couple of F1s at the start of the session.
Yeah, I got you off, and then you went out to 16 metres where I saw you were cupping in small balls of micro pellets.
Yeah, I then moved across to Island, just a quite delicate rig, a 0.3 AS3 float, just strung out shots, probably about 3 foot deep, but much deeper than what I'd really want fishing to an island. But this island where I'm on, it's particularly bad. There's a 3 foot shelf and then it comes up to literally nothing, so it's a funny peg. Anyway, I started there just cupping in micros and just fishing a soft pellet hook, and I had a couple of decent fish. I did lose a carp that just pulled off, that I'm sure were hooked in mouth as well. But, you know, everything that has happened today, the fish have been really tentative at feeding. And I caught a few skimmers and a couple of F1s fishing there before I decided that, you know, that weren't going to be good enough to sort of move me forward.
And then I see you've started flicking or pinging a few 8mm longer.
Yeah, I actually drew the next peg about a couple of months ago, just after we started back from lockdown, and I caught a lot of carp on bomb and 8mm pellet, which is unusual for Lindholme. Normally on these smaller lakes, 8mm pellets is not the right way to go, but when you're targeting carp, these, you know, 8mm pellets do pick them out. So I pinged 8mm out to a distance, probably about, I don't know, 35 metres.
Yeah, 35 metres, yeah.
And fished a bomb over at top of it. There were odd blows coming up off at bottom, like plumes of bubbles, which tell you that there were a few fish there. So as soon as I realised there were a few fish on that line, I went on a bomb and I caught a carp almost immediately. So that were a good start, but then really couldn't catch another one. But there were odd carp swirling in among the 8mm pellets that I was feeding. I was just pinging out 2s and 3s, so you can keep them quite tight with a waggler type catapult that I use for pellets.
And then I saw when there was a few fish swirling, I see you pick the waggler rod up And then you tried to catch them shallow over the top?
Yeah, I picked up a waggler. The cut down wagglers what I use. They're a Drennan pellet waggler that I've actually cut down in length slightly, and they take about two swan shots maybe. And you can cast even that size float if you use the right main line, past your 8mm pellets. If you use a light reel line, I mean, you're not fishing for a massive weight today, and a 4-pound reel line is quite adequate. So you can easily cast past 8mm pellets with that waggler. So that's what I did. I swapped onto that, fishing maybe about sort of 2'6" deep, and I caught a couple of carp nearly straight away. I did lose one big fish that I played for a while that pulled off, that went round this tree here and nearly dragged me in at one point. But I caught a few on that, but very quickly I realised that they were spooking away from waggler landing. I mean, the problem is, same as I said, these fish are so spooky, and you could tell that although you were getting a very odd bite, they were not really wanting to feed on that waggler line.
So then you decided to stop feeding that line altogether?
Yeah, I'd been pinging a few 4mm pellets short to try shallow, and I did go in and try shallow. I mean, not normally at Lindholme, the F1s are around about, I don't know, 18" deep or even shallower than that. And I went in slapping a rig and I couldn't get any bites at all. And of course, with flat calm conditions, you'd expect to catch F1s really with 4mm pellets, but I couldn't get a bite. So I swapped over to a deck rig on the same line, and I did catch a couple of F1s on that, just fishing on bottom with 4mm or 6mm pellet, banded pellet on the hook, and just pinging a few 4mm over the top. Now I was still pinging at that point an odd 8mm out at distance, but suddenly I thought, right, none of these methods what I've actually done is quite right. So even though I'd rigged up 8 top kits, I rigged up a 9th. I quickly scrambled a rig together with a long line and just a crystal caster float, which I used for flicking out past. So I had a full length rig on a kit, so I could flick out past the pole end. I stopped feeding the 8mm at distance because I felt that were keeping the carp out at distance, and started pinging 6s, fishing a 16-metre pole and just swinging a rig out past a full kit length past, fishing about, again, sort of, I don't know, 18", maybe 2 foot deep, fishing a 6mm banded pellet.
And that was clear. That was like flicking a light switch, because your catch rate certainly skyrocketed.
Yeah, I think what it is, some days they just back off that waggler because you've got to cast it, it's got to land, and when it's good, the fish almost come to the splash of the waggler. That's when it's a sort of red letter day for that type of method. And although I'd caught an odd one on it, I felt that maybe flicking a rig out and being a lot less splashy and a lot less just fishing it nice with a long line, I'd catch more fish. So that's what I did. I completely stopped feeding 4s, stopped feeding the long line, and just started pinging 6s. And of course, when you're pinging them out past a 16-metre pole and swinging out onto them, you've got no pole waving about over the top of the fish.
And then towards the end of the match, we cracked a joke that the only thing you hadn't really caught on was down the edge, or not down the edge, just off the edge, about 2-3 metres off the bank.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
At the end of the day, the fish on that long line had backed off a little bit. I think as the day goes on, the fish do start to come into margins. And maybe I should have been on it maybe half an hour earlier, to be honest, but I was still catching odd fish on that long pole, and I knew the lake were fishing very difficult. So I've sort of stuck a little bit longer. I think if the lake had been fishing well, I'd have been in on this shorter line a lot earlier. Now, I've not actually fished to the bank. What I've done, I've found the bottom of the slope, just where it's sort of getting onto flat bottom, which were about maybe 2 metres off bank. 2
metres, yeah.
Yeah, two metres off bank. This is an area of the lake not many people fish really, but what I found just of late, there's a lot of fish just hanging on that bottom of that crease. They don't want to come into margins, but they'll come into that before they come into the margins later in the day. So I've gone in there with corn, just tapping corn out of a pot, just compressing a little bit of corn into a pot, tapping it over the top. I'd actually been hand loose feeding that line for probably about 3/4 of an hour, just dropping a few bits of corn on that line. And when I dropped on it, it was solid, to be honest. I've caught like quite a few skimmers, a couple of F1s, and I sort of thought to myself I should have been on this line half an hour earlier, because it was very good, it was quick. You went in, tapped your sort of your corn in, just laid a piece of corn up against ledge, and away to go, you get one. Again, on that line you can fish a little bit more aggressive as well. I mean, I fished a fine wire 14 up, just buried in sight corn, so you can catch fish really quickly. The silverfish pellet hook that I use for that is a phenomenal hook, because it's very fine but very strong, and when you're catching F1 skimmers and the odd carp, they're a brilliant hook, even though they're so fine. Corn, it sort of, if you fish too heavy a hook, I think you miss too many bites with it.
And what else has been clear today is how hard fighting the fish have actually been today.
Oh yeah, everywhere I've been, I mean, I've been fishing quite a few matches at Ayfield, and the fish, I think probably because they've had a lot of bait over the last few months, the fish are very fit, and they do pull your arm off. They've really fought well today. I mean, the thing about it is I've pulled off quite a lot of fish today on the long pole. Also on every method really, I've lost an odd fish, and I think that's because the fish are so wary and difficult to catch. You can't fish with heavy gear and what you would normally. You're sort of scaling down a little bit to try to get bites and catch the fish in the mouth, because what's happening, I think they're rejecting the bait very quickly, or just mouthing it, because they've seen so many pellets over this period.
That's right. And you had a few skimmers down the edge, and I noticed that you were using yellow bungee elastic for the majority of the pole work today, and that's been just about right?
Yeah. I think if I'm fishing just shallot for F1s, I like the green bungee better. I mean, just because, for simple reason that when you hook them shallow, they can just swim down and you can ship back very quickly. And once you shorten the green bungee down, you can net the fish. You can catch, I find, quicker sometimes on lighter elastics with F1s than what you can with a heavier one. But of course today, when I were on that swinging rig, you needed a slightly heavier elastic, the yellow bungee. And of course when I was fishing up to the bank, you needed yellow bungee, and it's a nice elastic for fishing down the edge for mixed fish as well. If it had been just carp, and you know, somewhere like Ayfield or, you know, Allcroft, where you're fishing for bigger fish, I'd step up to the pink type bungee.
So the defining moment today really was the swinging rig. It's really changed your match around.
Yeah, I mean, even though I'd set up a lot of kit for today, I mean, what I've tried to do, because I'm fishing more carp matches now, I've tried to make sure I'm covering all my options, so that, you know, if you're in a difficult area, you can work out what is best to try and catch a weight from that area. And it's worked really well. I mean, I've looked at what, you know, some of the better anglers, Andy Powers, Des Ship and one or two others, and they set up a lot of gear, because these fish are really unpredictable. They change constantly, whether they're shallow on bottom, in edge, dark bottom at ledge. They're just fish that they're really difficult to say. A lot of people can ask you, how do you fish Lindholme? Well, it's very difficult to tell them, because every day is different.
All of the tackle you've set up today has worked, albeit not like the pinging line, in that you've got one or two fish and then it will go quiet. So you change line, one or two fish, it will go quiet. Ended up on the 16-metre pinging line. It's proven its work today. You've won the match by nearly £30. Congratulations. Last words before we pack up and head off?
Yeah, I think, you know, if you want to learn about carp fishing, Lindholme Lakes is one of them places that you can catch a lot of fish and you can learn a lot very quickly. I know it's been great for me to come here and learn how to catch these type of fish. So anybody who wants to come to Lindholme Lakes, that's, you know, you're more than welcome. It's fantastic fishing and a fantastic fishery that's kept really nice for everybody.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your time. It's I've certainly enjoyed watching you for a full match, and congratulations on your win.
Yeah, now I need to go and rest my back, swinging 16 metres of pole about.
Thank you. Brilliant.
Cheers.